Uh, Good morning to all the viewers of Tax Sutra. The long-awaited historic budget is out. No doubt the finance minister was under severe constraints because of the enormous impact of the pandemic. And it is quite heartening that there have been major announcements on a macro level. For example, the insurance sector has opened up, the FDI has gone up, I think, 74%. There are a lot of other infrastructure projects, health, education, the expenditure has gone up. So I think that thrust of the finance minister may be to stimulate growth through expenses. So that is on the macroeconomic front. There is also a proposal to have a huge amount of road construction through highways. There is also proposal to have some 100 new what we call electric parks or something. Sorry, the mega industrial textile parks are sought to be to boost textile exports. So all these are good proposals, and I hope that they pan out into reality. We had a wonderful time when Mr. Atal Bihari Vajpayee had this golden quadrilateral that made a huge difference to India. I hope the new highway project and the other infrastructure projects give a big boost. The insurance sector also will get a lot of money from overseas, and this is also good. Now, this is on the economic front. I'll just focus mainly on the tax proposals in the finance bill because, as a lawyer, my focus is more on the legal aspects of the bill. I find that as far as the bill is concerned, there are 160 clauses in the finance bill. So there are large number of amendments. I think the old trend of amending, making multiple amendments, wherever there is some amount of revenue involved, you amend it and plug it. That is the main philosophy, and which I don't think is a good thing. If we have to aim at high economic growth, then we will have to necessarily have a much broader view of the of economics and of tax policy. I think the most fundamental change should be the shift from the complete focus on tax collection and revenue maximization at any cost. A unidimensional, singular focus thing on just collecting more tax and plugging every possible leakage is counterproductive. I think we'll have to take a holistic view. To give you an example, what I'm saying, for example, real estate. Now, there have been a crying need for boosting the real estate sector. It's a large generator of employment. There's a huge housing shortage. And we had proposed that 43CA should be abolished. But what has happened is they've increased the safe harbor to 120%. I don't know why can't we just cancel it? Then interest has been just increased by a certain amount. If you give full allowances and boost the real estate sector, you may lose some amount of income tax. But the gain you'll get through GST on cement and other things by boosting the real estate sector, the amount of employment you'll generate will be far more than what you lose. Similarly, the minor proposal, like for example, you denied carry forward loss to a charitable trust. You have taken away goodwill in mergers and acquisitions. These are all minor things which could have allowed to continue in the larger scheme of things, and the focus could have been more on how to make Indian tax system attractive to the foreigners. And I've been saying that we should have an overall perspective of all the taxes put together and see how India can be a tax-friendly destination as compared to Vietnam and so on and so forth. That is most important than this particular proposal. Then there are some proposals, particularly on reopening of assessment, where the whole thing has changed. Then they abolished the authority for advance ruling and made it into a board for advance ruling. Now, this board consists of 2 commissioners. So I think it's a retrograde step. They could have abolished the authority for advance ruling and given it to the income tax tribunal, because tribunal has got the expertise to deal with tax questions. Against the tribunal's order, there is a reference to the High Court. So instead of having 2 commissioners deciding advance rulings, I don't think it's going to serve any purpose. We have got DRP with 3 commissioners. We know that it's very difficult for them to take an independent view. And what will happen is if 2 commissioners take a particular view in an advance ruling case, then it is going to affect hundreds of other SSCs, though it's not a binding precedent, but that's the view going to be taken. And we see in GST also, a advance ruling headed by commissioners, 80-90% of the cases are against the SSC itself. So the only reason to go to advance ruling is to reach the High Court faster, because you know you're going to get an adverse ruling and you go to the High Court. I'm also afraid that if we got a board for advance ruling manned by commissioners, then no foreign investor is going to even attempt to apply to this board for advance ruling, because he knows the decision is going to be against him from the beginning. That's the historical perspective, historical fact. So I think there's a retrograde step. Even in equalization levy, the changes that have been made could lead to more and more litigation. And I think there is a serious concern on this overlap between TCS and TDS. You have unnecessarily making people deduct 0.1% here, 0.2% there. It increases the huge cost of complying with the law. And I don't know what is the overall tax benefit that they're going to get on this. So I think the amendments could have been avoided. Many amendments were wholly unnecessary. There's also a danger of the GST and other laws being retrospective. There are quite a few retrospective amendments now. For example, the Supreme Court held that for clubs there is no GST because it's a mutual association. Now that has been amended retrospectively from 1/7/2017. What for? What is the total amount of revenue from all the clubs in India? How many are they making profit? What will be the tax? Why do you do such a retrospective taxation? I don't see. And again, the obsession with fake invoices and various changes made also is going to prove to be counterproductive. Overall, I thought that many of the amendments could have been avoided. We could have focused more on a budget stimulating growth rather than focusing on collection of taxes.
Yeah. So I can't let you go without asking you a question on faceless tribunal. It's already creating quite a bit of controversy, and the first reactions have not been so positive to it. There is a feeling that we are moving too fast. We are rushing it. Faceless assessment appeals have not even started in earnest, and you now are talking about a faceless tribunal. It's giving a lot of people the jitters.
I don't know exactly what you mean by a faceless tribunal. If you mean that tribunal hearings are going to be through video conferencing, then I have no objection to that, because we are even now appearing through video conferencing. So if I'm going to see Mr. Arun Giri as a member of the tribunal, instead of appearing before you in person in a court hall, I appear before you on the video conference as I appear before judges and things, then there is no problem. But if you're saying that faceless, I don't even know who are the members in front of me, then I think it's a matter for serious concern. I don't know if that is what is contemplated by a personal hearing, at least at the tribunal level. And I also don't know why they are going to this faceless assessment. I thought that you're right. Instead of rushing through, they could have tried this faceless assessment for 2 years, seen the feedback, seen faceless CIT appeals for 2 years, and then go to faceless assessment. If faceless tribunal means that you don't even see the members, then it's going to be a very difficult thing, because a lot of things depends on the questions put by the bench, the body language of the judges, the arguments which you make. I mean, how can you have a faceless judge? You're just arguing into a scheme. You don't even see who the person is, what is his doubt. You don't understand anything at all.
You could violate, sir, the basic structure, doctrine, or the independence of the tribunal. You argued Madras Bar Association case, sir.
No, I don't know what you mean by faceless assessment. Do you mean that you can't even see the
faceless tribunal? Yeah, I think what the finance minister, if I recollect correctly in the speech, said is that anyone who wants a personal hearing can ask for it through a virtual hearing or video conferencing. But the scheme itself, they are going to set up some faceless center, some national center of the tribunal, and possibly it could be a replica of the faceless assessment or faceless appeal. For a moment, let's presume that, sir.
Actually, I don't even know what it means by how a faceless assessment is done. I only know that you get some response from some officer, you don't know who he is, and then you respond to him and so on and so forth. So they should really spell out what they mean by a faceless tribunal, because I don't think anywhere in the world you've got a high tribunal at a high level of income tax, which is a final fact-finding authority dealing with crores of matters. And that's the main place where you get a real decision, real justice.
Sure.
Right? Whether you like it or not, the AO invariably confirms the order. CIT appeals may get some relief, but historically, all of us have placed faith in the income tax tribunal. Now, I think it should better not to tamper with it. You can perhaps say that virtual hearings will be there unless it's a batch case or unless it's a special bench case where you want a physical hearing. Otherwise, it should be, you can say hearings will be virtual. That's perfectly fine. But if it faceless means I don't even see the members, then I have got a serious issue. But let's see how it actually pans out.
Yeah, just one more question, sir, on reopening. The timeline has been reduced to 3 years. We've seen so much litigation, so reopening. You argued so many cases. You argued one in Supreme Court on NDTV successfully. Writs after writs after writs. You remember that famous dialogue of Damini, Tariq pe Tariq, Tariq pe Tariq. So many reopening cases, sir. You think that somewhere the courts will get declogged due to this reopening?
See, what they have done is, as I see the amendment, they made it 3 years. And I think for some exceptional cases, they made it 10 years. And I think they've added some kind of restrictions on when you can reopen. But you see, the point is where the board talks of some risk assessment strategy. We don't know what that means. Actually, I was right along. I've been in various seminars or fora. I've been saying that why don't you follow the central excise model for reopening? Today you issue a reopening notice. I don't even know on what ground you're reopening. Suppose I'm let's say a large company, a listed company with a turnover of say 1,000 crores. Now, if you're going to reopen my assessment, you must at least issue me a notice saying that, look, Mr. Giri, as the tax officer or the MD, in your assessment, I find that on depreciation, this is wrong. And here income has escaped assessment. So you laser focus on that point, issue me a notice with time on. At the time of issuing notice under 148, they could have given a show cause notice that we are reopening the assessment for ABCD reasons. Right? Today you simply say I'm reopening, whether it's under capital gains or it's under business income or it is under MAT, nobody knows. So I thought that plus the reason for the department can be annexed. That would have been better. I don't know by this one. And I think what happens to the old case laws, you can't have a mere change of opinion. Yep. All those judgments, how they're going to be impacted, let us see the fine print.
Right up to Kelvinator.
Yes.
From
absolutely.
Time immemorial to Kelvinator.
Yes.
Absolutely, sir. Sir, but last question you can have. Sir, I know you're running short of time, sir. But in terms directionally, sir, on the tax policy side, every year you see a plethora of amendments. This year is no exception. You have almost 100 amendments. Where exactly do you think we are heading in terms of direct tax policy, sir? You revised the iconic commentary Kanga and Palkiwala.
See, the point is, this is a budget which has made no difference from the earlier thing of making multiple amendments. Like for example, you take 1023C. Now we've got the 20th proviso, and then an explanation file added to the corpus donation is made. You can't use it. Mega textile park scheme. All right, so you want to boost textile exports. As it is, most of them are shifted to Vietnam and Philippines and Cambodia and wherever. Now, if you want a mega textile park for the purpose of encouraging export, then your GST should be amended to encourage export. You can't have a GST system where there is very difficult to get credit, difficult to get refunds, everything is clogged to your park. So if you got these major proposals, then everything must be geared to encourage that. I ask myself a simple question. If a person has a choice of investing in Vietnam, India, or Thailand, what is it in the budget which will make him run to India and make it as a preferred destination? You see, that's what we have to think and answer. That what are the options open? It's like buying. You see, today if I've got a choice of 3 products, A, B, C, then I will choose which is most suitable. So government must say that India should become so attractive that there's no incentive to go anywhere. We've got a ready-made market of 130 crore people, right? So all these electronic goods which are made in smaller countries can be shifted to India if you just give them the incentives. Whether you got the PLI scheme or this scheme and that scheme, you see we have done all this software park and hardware parks. They won't click SEZs. What has happened to SEZs? They're not really clicked at all because you have SEZs, then you impose MAT on them. So this you have a very, very clear vision of where we want to go. And I think if you want to have a 5 trillion economy, if you want to go to a 5 trillion economy, then you have to have a far, far broader vision and don't think of tax in a unidimensional way. Think of it as an overall growth catalyst rather than a tax collecting mechanism.
do not think of growth in a unidimensional manner.
No,
Say
do
senior.
no, do not think. I mean, let's not focus on just plugging tax loss here and tax loss
Got
there.
it.
Yeah, if you're going to save in income tax, but it is going to hamper the growth of that sector, you're losing out on indirect taxes, losing out on employment. That's what my point is. If
Sir is saying, do not miss the woods for the trees. That's what sir
yes,
is
that's
saying.
a better way of putting it. I think you have put it better than me.
Yeah. So, what a pleasure always hearing from senior advocate, legal luminary, constitutional scholar, and one of the foremost thinkers we have in this country, Mr. Arvind Datta. Thank you so much, sir, for talking to
Thank
Tax
you. Wish
Solution.
you all the
Thank
best.
you.
Wish all your viewers all the very best.
Thanks
Take
so
care.
much, sir. Thanks
Always
so
a
much.
pleasure talking to you.